definitely is losing some of its cachet and priority when there's more bigger stuff right now that is flowing through. Um, I don't turn any business away because I've been doing it too long where a banner stand or a tabletop at the beginning of a relationship, more times than not, at least in our group, has turned into a long relationship that if you would have gone back to the beginning, you'd never guess that that could happen. I'm sure there are groups out there that have to turn it away just with what is going on right now with the realm of what everything is. Um, I'm finding that I've got less patience of someone who wants to buy just that banner stand and want to pay pre-COVID prices and give me all the gruff about why it should be the old days of cost and everything. And I'm like, is anything else in your life being affected by supply chain and cost increases and everything else? Then you have to understand that that's coming here as well. But we try and
Yeah.
not turn any business away. It'd be nice if we had someone who was younger and not as experienced that we could get them groomed into that, but finding that person is another needle in a different haystack.
So what you're saying is that you make too much money to be playing around with banner stands.
I would love it if that were true.
Hey Rob,
I
I'm
wouldn't
I'm
be.
gonna throw it to you because you're kind of in the same position we are, and you're dealing with the same clientele as we are. What are you hearing out there?
Well, what I do is, first of all, thanks, Tom. And I would, and we do, turn away the business that you can't meet the unrealistic expectations of. So I don't want to take on anything that we can't deliver on, because the worst thing you can do is disappoint your customer because you're not going to get them to come back for the next opportunity. Um, that said, size wise as to order, no, going to take large, going to take small, but manage expectations more than ever today.
Mhm. Hey, Joel, I'll pick on you. What are your thoughts on this?
Um, it's hard to say. I mean, we aren't consciously turning work away, but we are consciously charging the proper price. So we've adjusted, for inflation. Our people are pretty diligent about sticking to their guns that if you want this, our associated coordination fees and all that are going to go into this. And generally, with some kind of an explanation to people that, and an apology sort of about what's happened. I'd say most of the orders are still going through, and we're feeling better that we're actually getting the proper pricing for it. So we're not, like Steve said, we're not going to say no. However, I will say that we are on the verge of implementing like a minimum order here. We just kind of we looked at the 900 jobs that went through here last year, and 400 of them were under $500 or something, and it's just not worth it after a while. And if you can take that time and dedicate it to something else, I think you could turn it into something more profitable. So I guess that's kind of a weird, convoluted answer, but that's kind of where we are.
No, it makes total sense. I mean, you're kind of drawing the line in the sand on where you need to start. But I just those projects that you were dealing with prospects or clients where you said, this is our price, and how do you vet those? I mean, at what point do you have so much time involved in it that you said, "Oh, screw it, let's just go ahead with it"?
I mean, we don't have people on the streets really. A lot of our sales are from existing relationships. We have web hits here and there, but so we're not really pursuing it. And I think we have to look at it as, is it the opening of a door into a bigger opportunity? And we really have challenged our company to think about that, right? Not just say no. Our sales team got together and they're saying, you're feeling like we got to go in and get every penny up front, yet you're hurting our foot in the door. And don't do that. Please don't do that to us. You know, like kind of consciously look at every opportunity and make a definite decision whether it's worth the pursuit or not.
Mhm. So Greg, you're not a traditional exhibit house business. You're more on the agency side, experiential. What about you guys? What are you seeing?
I think for portables, we probably price ourselves out of the game. Like, I don't think we're turning business away. We just, the price kind of is what it is, and if they can get it elsewhere, then okay, right? So, but I don't think we consciously are turning business away for all the same reasons that everybody else has inquired or has talked about here today. But you're right, it's not our core. Like Joel was just saying, it's not like we're out soliciting those orders. So, maybe a little bit of a different dynamic. I think our team is certainly sensitive to if one of our existing client relationships asks us for anything, then we figure out a way to say yes. But I think the precedent's already kind of been set with those relationships that our pricing is our pricing. It's why you're doing business with us. So.
Okay. John, you've got quite a few people on the team today, and I'm sure you got some new people, and so how do you handle a scenario when you have someone bring something to you, an opportunity, and you just say just doesn't fit right, especially with new people? How's that handled, and not to be discouraging to Matt, for instance,
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I agree with everything everybody said. I think that we're really not out soliciting this size business, but boy, it sure has over 16 years or actually 30 years of our existence help us grow our business. I'm not sure who said it. Might have been Greg or someone else. Well, without that banner stand or that table throw or that small display, we would not have grown our business. So when one of our clients comes to us and asks us, hey, could you do this, this, and this, and in that realm, banner stands or tabletops, we will do it. I mean, that's a loyalty factor that we've built into our company. But I don't think, Tom, it's not discouraging to Matt and Kim and others. I think it's just knowing where our priorities are. We're trying to build a lot more modular, larger custom work in a big shop growing into a new facility. And it's just, you hate to, it's not a disparaging, but you hate to take that $300, $400, $500 order and take your eye off something that you could spend just about as much time, working on a 20 by 20 or 20 by 30 display. Sometimes even banner stands, as we all know, guys, smaller orders take just as much time. And I know that's not always the case, but we really have just said, listen, we'll help those that need help. We have done smaller orders, but not discouraging. I think it's actually the opposite. We're just trying to build the revenue base for both the organization and our sales team. And so hopefully it's actually a positive and not turning it away, but just shifting our priority a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. We came up with this topic because we had been hearing from a certain group of distributor partners of Classic that they had been turning away work. And I think it's, a lot of your responses today have surprised me a little bit, because I thought it would be more in tune to what we were hearing, but I'm not hearing that so much. But yeah, Gwen, did you have something? You raised your hand.
Yeah. So as far as the industry trends, from what we're seeing, it is a true statement. A lot of the larger exhibit house companies have partnered with smaller companies. I mean, I know at EDPA at the end of last year, I was introducing people to to different people because that's what they were like, hey, do you know anyone that offers this, that, and the other? So there's a lot of really solid partnerships going on to where the exhibit, the larger ones are handling the custom side of it, more of the agency type things, versus then they partner with the smaller who's doing all the portable programs behind the scenes. To the client, they don't know any different. And I think in some instances, even the clients are part of it in saying, hey, contractually, yes, we're going to work with these two. What's interesting though is I don't know, way before the pandemic, internationally, that's how things happened. I mean, I know for a lot of companies, they said that's too many transactions for too little money. And we had international clients looking for exhibit house companies in the North America to support them because they couldn't find anybody internationally, because that's kind of how they started it a long time ago. So it was interesting.
Yeah, there was one particular case of a large custom house that partnered with a small exhibit house and gave them all their portable business, and didn't even ask for a commission on the business, anything. They just said, "Here, you take it," and the relationship is developed to the point where they make joint calls when they have a client that needs a portable program. They bring in this other partner into it, so now you've got two different businesses managing that one smaller bit of business. But so that's been really interesting dynamic.
Hey, Tom.
Yeah, Mike.
I will be one of those people you had talked to before. So I'm going to share with you guys a Post-it note that's on my monitor that I put about a year ago. And that's not saying no to opportunities. It's just being smarter about which opportunities I do say yes and no to. I was so worried in the early part of my career to ever say no to anybody. And one of the things that the pandemic taught me was that I had to say no to people all the time because of material issues and not being able to get things and all that stuff. And I found out that my clients were loyal. They still did come back to me, even though I said we couldn't do something for whatever reason, or I was always worried about would they come back. And I'm finding that they have. And the no that I have there isn't to say no to opportunities. It's to say, is it a smart opportunity? And if I give you a price and you don't like it, and they say, can you lower your price? My answer is no. I'm going to try to stick to that as much as I can. So that no isn't just say no to one thing. It's just kind of a reminder that I can be smarter and a little bit more strategic about what projects we do take on. And if that's a banner stand, great. But there are also $20,000, $30,000 projects we shouldn't take on either. So
That's true too.
Yeah, no, that's what we've been hearing. Bobby, what are you hearing at Genesis? It's your place.
Yeah, I was gonna chime in, and then Mike did. I mean, we're kind of along the same lines. During the pandemic, it really gave us a chance to kind of take a step back. And after doing the grind in New York City for so many years and taking every order that would come our way because we needed to make rent and payroll, to now retooling our company, being more strategic about how we do business, it's allowed us to evaluate the types of projects that we want to take on. And we're privileged to be able to have that flexibility, to be able to say, basically have the ability to say no. But that was an approach we took during COVID because we couldn't do everything. We couldn't take it. We didn't have the capacity. It was 2 chimps and a bell and a roll of duct tape. Like we're just trying to scrape by. And here we are now, rebuilding the team, reconstituting the business coming out of COVID. And it's again given us that flexibility. To Mike's point, there's been a number of instances throughout the last couple of years where we've strategically turned business down because it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth the stress on the team. It wasn't worth the stress on our partners, our vendors. And to that note, sometimes we've been forced to say no because either the clients come to us with lead time issues, they haven't given us enough time to execute a project, or vice versa. We've had vendors come to us and say, we can't produce it in time. So then our hands have been tied to be forced to say no from both ends. I will say the majority of the projects that we've turned down have been coming from international clients because of the ask and also their lack of understanding. You know, we kind of see, okay, here comes an international lead. How do we want to approach this? Okay, maybe this might not be the best fit because there might be too much educating that has to go on, or there might, you know, it might not be worth stressing the team out to facilitate that project, even though it could be worth 5 or 6 figures at the end of the day. It might not be worth the process and the journey to get there. So there's, you know, there's different ways to look at saying no. It's one thing to say, okay, we're here, what can we do internally? But what are our vendors saying lead time wise? What are our clients saying, giving us a lead time? Is it an international client? There's a lot of different dimensions to kind of take a look at it.
Thanks. Hey, Greg, you had something to add?
Yeah, it seems like there's a distinction between new business, right, that's coming in that might be these kind of low cost price shopping, where you might want to refer that to somebody who's in a better position to deal with that, and then or servicing your existing client base. So I mean, I think that's a pretty big distinction. And we say internally, we walk away from a lot of RFPs because they're not good fits, but you know, we look at them and say we legitimately can't win no matter what, you know, effort we put forward. And then there's those situations where I say it fairly regularly, like I don't want to win business because we're the ones dumb enough to say yes. And there has been that, you know, where you kind of feel like somebody's been told no, and you know, you don't want to be the one that, you know, takes that job on for the wrong reasons. So
Yeah, well, you know, speaking of RFPs or RFIs, is that the quantity of those increased in 2022? And were they looked at in a different light? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I'll chime in. We've had a number of both existing clients that have gone to the RFP process in 2022. So they were good, longstanding clients pre-COVID. And then because our cost of goods had gone up and therefore our markups went up, their finance team was like, you have to do an RFP process. So we've experienced that in addition to an influx of what before used to be a general lead. We're seeing more and more RFPs come out on the lead side. So kind of from both ends.
Anyone else?
I think it's
So,
been pretty inconsistent, you know.
With with the limited trend that we're seeing of larger custom exhibit houses partnering with smaller, is that something that, let's say, Mike, you'd entertain at Ren's, partnering with someone else?
Well, you know, we're out here in the boonies, so who do we partner with? I'm in flyover country. Good question. You know, I've never even had an opportunity to entertain that.
I'll chime in. I'll chime in again real
Oh.
quick. Just retooling with our experience coming back in from COVID. We've actually developed strategic partners around the country that we'll tap into for regional projects. So instead of trying to source everything out of our own facility here in Greensboro, we've taken that dynamic approach to say, okay, who's going to be a better fit, because shipping's expensive, right? So if I can have a local provider, or local, even technically, you know, co-opetition is the term that we've been working on, where they're technically competition, but if we can be mutually beneficial to each other, you know, it's worked out really well for us.
Yeah, the setting up of strategic partners, including Classic, we obviously our business benefited in 2022 from all of your business and the uptick in business. And many of you probably on this call were affected by us having to turn down business because of shorter lead times, and that happened, and that's hard to do. And Mike, I don't have a post-it note on my desk that says no, but I've had to say no, and it's difficult because it's not like I'm dealing with anybody that's unknown quantity. And it's always hard, but people understand. Is there, when you do turn it down, is there, is that something that you put into a file for future contact? And is it a sales lead, or if it's a new prospect coming in? How do you handle those and following up with them to maybe start a relationship that would be a profitable one for both you and manageable for you and the client?
Yeah, we keep all those, Tom. I think it's a great thought. Every no is maybe someday a yes, as everybody's talked about on the call, and kind of put them in the CRM, and we'll go back through them. I just had a list today that some of the no's as our capacity grew last year, or lack thereof capacity, sorry, that we've kept them all in the CRM. We may have to, you never know, we may have to go back to all of those and find warm leads at some point. So yeah, we keep them all.
Like you guys probably, we found opportunity in the sense of where we're healthy and we hold inventory. When our competition hasn't been able to deliver for folks that we weren't doing business with, and they've turned to us, we've created new customers. And those people haven't run away and gone back to who provided for them before. They are tending to remember who bailed them out when they needed them. So it's a real interesting balance right now. When to say no, when to take it, when you can bail somebody out and help them. But like many of you, even on the supplier side, when you have the inventory, the price discussion tends to go away.
Yeah, I think that you're making a good point, both from a supplier side, from like DSNL side to an exhibit house. Price is an important factor, but if you're able to do the project within the timeline, I think those, unless you're charging exorbitant rates or setting a price point that is going to not be valid for the customer or client, then yeah, I think that people are willing to look past that. Any other comments about turning down business or types of business that before we move on to the next topic?
Hey, Tom, it's Joel. Just a comment on the RFPs. We found that they're getting more and more ridiculous with their requirements, right? So, not so much in an exhibit sense, but like we do work in, environmental graphics and things like that. And these general contractors and, just the rules and regulations that they're putting in, legalese. We found that you can fight with them, right? You gotta kind of swallow hard and say, what are you talking about? Like, why is there a $5 million umbrella on a $10,000 job or something? But we've been fighting and we've been winning, and we even had one, it was a university, they wanted something, and the RFP was so restrictive, nobody even submitted to it. And to your guys' point of saying, are you staying in touch with these people? We reached out, we asked, what's next steps. And it did get resubmitted with less, restrictions, and we ended up winning it. So I will say the RFPs absolutely stink. They're a pain in the neck. They take up so much time. But if you're willing to look at it and then decide if it's worth pursuing and willing to do battle with their procurement people, you can win. So that's what we found. And we've had a bunch of them where everyone else just gave up the fight. So just saying, like, just because it says what it says doesn't mean it is what it is, if that makes sense. I think if you're willing to battle a little bit.
Joel, was that an existing client or a new prospect that you're talking about?
No, we've pretty much been new projects with new general contractors, or again, the procurement department at let's call it a college or something. So generally, you're going in with no history, no relationship, and it's just a process. And again, if you're willing to kind of battle it out, I'm just saying you can win it, but it's not easy.
Yeah, I guess at that point you have nothing to lose, right?
Yeah, that's kind of how we feel, and all I can say is that probably half a dozen of these things we've come out winning it, where we really did at some point in time kind of challenge and say, do we really want to waste our time on this? And it ended up it wasn't a waste of time.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, Gwen, I'll get to you in a second, but Steve had his hand up too, so I'll let Steve comment first.
Sure.
Yeah, just kind of from a regional Ohio area, or maybe more specifically in the Columbus area. A lot of the RFPs that we have seen, majorly from a university, we have kind of been suspicious that they've come from a competitor, with the amount of ridiculousness within the details and the specs, and everything that Joel was talking about, with things that it just seems that the client has worked with a supplier and it's very favorable to them. For the most part, with our size, with what we do, we can't do that battle with City Hall on those RFPs. There have been a few times where we have initiated into it, and then no one else has come and wanted to battle with everything that was within that, and we've won small sections of it, and we'd rather do that. Anything that we can do to get out of that RFP and work as a partner versus a vendor. Vendor to us is a 4-letter word that just kind of gives clients the feeling that you can be abused and you're not a human and there's no relationship value there. And we just stress that, that value of the relationship, and that we've been there, we'll be there, and it's not just a transaction, as much as the bean counters want to call it that. If they come and see what happens in the real deal with leading up to it, and all the time that you have to spend to give a good response to an RFP, a lot of times it makes a lot of people just want to walk away from it, because I think it's built to be unfair. It's not fair to everybody, even though they tell you it is fair for everyone. I don't believe it is.
Oh, that's a great point. Gwen? Whoop, you're still muted.
Sorry, there's people outside my house cleaning our gutters. And it got a little loud for a moment. At least my dog's inside, otherwise that would be a whole nother level. I was just going to say, for technology side, the requirements, of course, with the cybersecurity and all of that, I mean, and GDPR compliancy, and it's forever grilling. And the exhibit house companies that we work with, a lot of them are saying, we're getting their RFPs and they're expecting responses from us. I'm like, well, we, manage this little bit of data for you. It's all the other stuff that you're doing. We can have whatever we have in place, but really, what do you have internally? But having companies get hit with on their servers, even exhibit house companies having cyber attacks. It's a real deal. And if people aren't thinking about that, you should be, because it's happened. We've gotten the phone calls going, 3 years worth of data because we were using this, other system in it, and we have nothing. So, being in the cloud, redundant or servers, all that jazz, it's a real deal. So things to consider.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice.
We're also seeing, Tom, the exhibit houses being under such pressure from a time standpoint that they'll come to us on a big project and they'll say, we're not even going to ask you to sign an NDA like we're supposed to. And we'll just redact the company information that's involved so that you can help us to get a quote because it's due in 48 hours. And there's no chance we have of staying in the game unless we do it this way. So they're trying to cut corners.
Yeah, it's, I know that, the last 6 months have been, or more, have been pretty stressful on everybody. And any kind of time savings has been invaluable, and any way to save those few minutes or hours it's been a struggle for people. So yeah, that's a good point. That's, and no one wants to take shortcuts, but you're forced into it.
Sure.
All right, let's move on to our second topic, which is design changes and client requests. What are clients looking for in the first half of 2023? And the reason we ask that is because a classic, we try to make predictions, and coming into 2022, we completely missed it. But in a good way, because I mean, it was a record year for us. However, and then, going into 2023, we thought that the trend that actually happened in 2022 would continue, and it hasn't. So don't look to us for any lottery numbers or anything like that, because we're not good at it. So what are you seeing what have you seen, and is that changing into 2023?
So Tom, I'll kick you off. What we're seeing is that folks are very confident about the first 6 months of the year. And I think they're waiting and seeing on the second 6 months of the year. So there's that optimism that people jumped into the year with, I think is being slightly tempered right now. And it's to be seen what happens. And that's from a world stage as well as an economic stage, domestically and internationally.
So that being said, with inflation still being out there and in the forefront, are you seeing requests for less custom and more portable? Mike or John, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah,
Sure,
we're
yeah, no,
definitely. Oh, go ahead. You first.
Go ahead,
sorry,
John.
Mike, sorry about that. Yeah, no, we're the same way. We feel really, really good about the first 6 months. I feel that our marketing coordinators, managers out there with our client base all over the country are kind of talking to the senior leaders of their organization as we are here, and not as bullish on the second half of where to spend my trade show dollars, whether I'm going, or maybe I'll go tabletop, maybe I'll go 10 by 10, 10 by 20. We already have the properties here. Maybe we'll just do that, versus this time last year, we probably had double the amount of new builds that we had kind of in the funnel pipeline for the second half already by, February or March. And Tom, you and I talked about that a good bit. So we're seeing a cautious optimism, but everybody's kind of waiting for the second half to see what's going to happen. And I think that's a carryover from their gargantuan years I think we probably all experienced last year. And phone is certainly not ringing off the hook. And so we're cautious as well. Sure.
Right. Mike, did you want to jump in on that?
I'll just say a couple things that I've noticed lately is that we're being asked for a lot more customization on portables. It's been a long time since I've sold something directly off of the exhibit design search. It seems like everybody's wanting me to do something, to augment that, to somehow customize it. So that's one thing that we've been seeing the last couple of months. The other thing that I've been seeing is clients wanting to get an exhibit from us, willing to pay us for it as if it were a purchase, but I have to call it a rental. On my invoice, I have to say rental because their companies don't want to buy an exhibit. And I'm upfront, I'm transparent. I'm like, okay, but you're going to pay as much as if you were purchasing, and they say they don't care. Now, sometimes this is for a 2-show or a 3-show, contract scenario. Not very often for just a one-off. But that's kind of surprised me in the last couple of months that's happened, and I'm certainly not opposed to it. I don't get to make any money off of charging them storage for it, but then I still own it and can, hopefully either rent it or sell it again later.
Wow, that is really something. I've never heard of that happening, but
Yeah,
that's
it's mostly in the healthcare sector. For whatever reason, some of these clients, they just don't want to own their assets.
Joel, I'll ask you this. Are you seeing any design changes or requests on something that's different this year design wise than it was last year?
I just think people are going more portable, more just call it system, right? Everyone's super conscious of the weight. I think the thing that we've heard the biggest barking about is the shipping costs. So everybody's trying to go lightweight and have knockdown type things. I will say also, similar to what Mike just said, we're seeing a lot of people, they're willing to buy what they want to buy, but they're asking us to break it up over a couple of shows. So their show last year was a certain price. It's now gone up, say, 25%. And they're saying, what do I do here? And then they ask, can I buy this, but can I buy it over the next 2 or 3 shows? And you kind of hit them up a little bit for carrying costs. But so I would say that mostly that they want something that breaks down. I also have found that this isn't a design thing, but it's sort of a behavioral thing, is that anybody that's a bigger company that has a decent sized trade show booth, if they only go to 1 or 2 shows a year, they're taking their storage into their building in between. And they're just saying, you know what, I'm going to save the money on the storage. Unfortunately, they got to ship it between back and forth, which is kind of counterintuitive. But so I think it's like a lot of it's weight related and bulk size related. People trying to get smaller, more compact designs, I think.
Yeah, that's when I told you we didn't predict very well last year, it started the year of 2022 a year ago. We thought we'd be selling more portable modular systems, and that wasn't the case. It was more custom work. In fact, 60 to 70% of what hit our floor order wise was full custom, some things you'd not see on EDS at all. And that stayed true throughout most of the year. And then going in December, we're seeing first quarter orders now were more portables and hybrid systems. And to your point, Joel and others, that people want to have a 20 by 20 that can also be reconfigured to an inline because they don't want to spend money on 3 different systems. They just want to have one for an island for a primary show, and then have that inline capability on the smaller shows. And all of a sudden now we're seeing tons of requests, quotes, and orders for hybrid systems, and they could be custom but it could be something like the Symphony, which it's still a bestseller, but that's very flexible too on what people can do. So those are the design trends we're seeing is smaller custom. And so people are still spending money, but I think there is that fear, a little bit of a fear about what's going to be happening, 6 months from now. And so we'll have to wait and see. So anybody else have any comments on that?
Hey, Tom, I was just talking about what Joel was mentioning. I don't know if all of you guys have seen the recent material handling and labor rate survey that just came out from the exhibitor advocate. But, that's a sobering document to read about what material handling charges are and how much they've increased compared to inflation. So I think what Joel is saying is we're gonna keep seeing more of that. I think people want to keep getting things lighter and lighter if they're going to have to keep paying these ridiculous rates.
Joel, how do you feel about being a bank to your clients?
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great. I mean, what we're trying to do is, let's say they have 3 shows, they automatically want to say, oh, divide it by 3. No effing way, So we're pretty much getting the cost of it up front, and then we'll get our profit over the other couple of shows, but we're not carrying the cost of it. We'll delay our profit portion of it, but we're not financing it.
Yeah, no, cash flow is still king, and I'm sure that you just can't afford to stretch it out that long. But that's interesting. That's first I've heard of that happening. I don't know if anybody else has been approached by clients to do something like that.
No, but I'll tell you proactively, Tom, we regularly revisit the credit health of our customers to determine, whether we are or the amount of credit that we're extending to them. Because we're seeing folks' credit change rapidly in terms of, their time to pay, et cetera. So we are keeping an eye on it because we are a bank to our customers.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Outside of these 2 topics, is there anything anybody would like to bring up that you think is relevant to wanting to share with the group?
I'd love to hear from the group around this subject of the exhibitor advocate. What are you hearing from your customers who really need to be the ones fighting the fight and being a part of that organization versus all of us? Is there talk of them joining that movement, playing a part in it, speaking up and being a voice? Or are they apathetic like they were to the demise of TS2?
Maybe, Rob, I'm going to rephrase your question a little bit.
Sure.
How many of you are bringing up the subject of the exhibitor advocate and encouraging clients to participate? I think that a client in Lincoln, Nebraska may not have any idea, Mike, of the exhibitor advocate, but they should. And so is it our responsibility to push that as well?
Yeah, I think so. And whether that's on an individual basis, which is all I have been doing so far, or whether it's some sort of direct, or mass sort of, email campaign or what have you to your whole client list. Yeah, I think the more that our clients can get involved and be a part of this, hopefully something can spark a change.
Is there anybody on the call that's not familiar with the exhibitor advocate and that I could send information to? Is there anybody who wants that? Well, it's a good thing then. I'm glad everybody's familiar with it because They're doing a
Well, I'm
fantastic
not
job.
that familiar with it, so I'd appreciate information on it.
Oh, okay, Bill. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'll get you the link to their organization. The more we support that, the more good works they're going to be able to do. So it's important to the industry. And I actually feel like the exhibitor advocate could do a lot more than TSEA ever did for the industry. I mean, they're in the right mindset to get things done, and more incentive to get things done. And because the cost issues are at the forefront of everybody's mind at this point. It's a topic that we can't avoid. So, and if they can advocate for change, which is difficult, hopefully it'll benefit us all. Yeah, it's a good point to bring up. Just encourage you to check it out. But every time I try to talk to people, I encourage them to try to reach out to clients. And in most cases, there's a lot of who are so just wrapped up in their own world, they just don't know that's out there, and it's free for your clients to join. So at least they can receive newsletters and information that might stimulate some desire to help change, and hopefully get people out to Exhibitor Live, which
Yep.
I don't know. A lot of people here in the call going to be at Exhibitor Live.
Yeah, we're going.
Good. Yeah, it'll be an interesting show, to say the least.
Hey, Tom, one other quick question. How are people doing with hiring or rehiring or finding people? As I know, we lost a lot of people in the industry, and I feel like it's still a struggle finding people, but just curious whatever everyone else is seeing and feeling out there.
I can share with you, Joel, that it's at the forefront of the EDPA's mind. There's a very large group working on workforce development, which is a very long-term project. There's no quick fix to it. If anyone thinks that they're going to get in touch with their local elected officials, regional elected officials, or national officials and say, hey, we're in the trade show industry and we got a workforce development problem and you have to help us. Well, forget about it, because there are a lot of ships sailing on that subject right now because everybody needs people. So what we're working on are more aggressive, targeted type things. I can tell you from my research, there's a lot of local resources and dollars available on the workforce development side. The challenge is it tends to be available to companies as opposed to an association or a group of regional companies in an industry, to go to their, and I mean local governments, regional governments, as opposed to city even or state, and say, hey, we can create X jobs. Here's what we need. I think it's important, and we are knocking on doors at regional trade schools to talk about filling the bench shop positions and educating people about the existence of an industry, just as we did in major advocacy, and the opportunities that are here. And part of that is, hey, how would you like to have your employer pay for you to go to Las Vegas? And all those great things that aren't so great as we do it too many times. So there's that big push on the regional side. It's getting out to trade fairs. We're going to one, meaning the EDPA is going to one, and we're not sending old folks like me. I won't include you in that, Joel, but we're not sending old folks like me. We're sending those young leaders that are rising in our industry to attend things like the Association of School Counselors and making them aware of the opportunities in this industry. And again, this is a long-term project, right? But people are hard at work at it. And if you're not a part of the EDPA, I'll make the plug and urge you to be a part of it, because that's the organization that's rolling us all forward.
Hey, Joel, was there a specific position that you're struggling with more than others?
Well, I mean, I think the builders is a whole issue, and it's an age issue. A lot of the old school builders are just getting old, and there's not the backfill of 40-year-olds or whatever to kind of take over. I think our biggest struggle, believe it or not, has been in the detailing. So, the people doing the construction drawings, creative side is pretty good, Bemidji, and they've done a good job of populating our industry, as we all know. And graphic designers are a dime a dozen, like, kind of thing. Not necessarily that there's a lot of good ones, but there's a lot of them. But I think the detailing part of it, because there's a disconnect between the fab and the computer, and so to have somebody understand how to build something when the builders are older guys that are kind of actually, they go out and bench build half the time and don't even use drawings other than just generalized things. So that's been our pain point, is the detailers, and it takes a while to do those drawings, if you're building a custom exhibit. In our case, we build, the broadcast stuff and desks and things like that. And there's some of them are pretty darn complicated. So to just get somebody that's a draftsman and then try to have them do some of the complicated things in our industry is hard. And so that's been our biggest pain in the neck.
Yeah, a detailer is not the job title that you hear a lot of. You still hear PMs or account managers, but you're right though. I mean, that's right at the very core of needing someone that's experienced or able to translate that design and to the shop floor. So yeah, that's a very relevant position.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
By the way, Tom, I think I talked with Satchel at Bemidji, and he said that they are working on developing that portion of the design program. So they understand there's a need, and sure, it's nice to create the pretty pictures, but they're trying to explain to people that there's a huge value in that role as well. And I think they're putting a couple of classes in place for that.
Oh, that's good. That's good news. Good. Unless someone has anything else you want to bring up, I'm going to wrap this up. So anything else?
Thank you, Tom.
No, thanks, Tom.
Yeah, great.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to see everybody's smiling faces again. And I don't know when our next call will be, but I'm assuming it'll be Q2, the second quarter. It's just we're realistic about everybody's busyness, and so probably next call will be sometime May. I'm assuming, but stand by and we'll get that information out. So thank you again, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks all.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.